Today on Locked On Red Wings, we bring back Andrew Rinaldi of Field Pass Hockey Griffins to give us a Jakub Vrana update and just let us know how those Grand Rapids Griffins are doing up to this point in the season.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for the Daily J, WWJ News Radio podcast. Well, Scotty is a freelance journalist for the Detroit News, as well as the host of Locked On Red Wings. And today we bring back Locked On Tigers.
I think people got that one.
I mean, you are a host of Locked On Red
You're
Wings.
right. You're right. You're not wrong.
Off to a great start. We bring back Andrew Rinaldi of Field Pass Hockey. He's a beat writer for the Grand Rapids Griffins. Andrew, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. I just got back from a little New Year's Eve night in Grand Rapids, and taking another L, but we'll get to that. Other than that, been doing fantastic. Off to a great start in 23.
That's great to hear, man. It's great to have you back on. We were kind of going back at it, back and forth on Twitter the other day when Jakub Vrana started his conditioning stint, and you said something along the lines of like, I got to make sure I can come back. And I had already in my head was like, I should probably get Andrew back on soon with Jakub Vrana coming down. So that timing of you saying that, I was like, he knows. He knows.
I had a feeling.
The source.
The source for Griffins News on Locked On Red Wings. But yeah, so obviously we're going to spend the first 10 minutes here at the very minimum talking about Jakub Vrana. News came out today as of recording this on Monday the 2nd that his conditioning stint is going to be extended from those 3 games that was initial to the entire 2 weeks that he can stay down there. What are your thoughts so far on Vrana's play? How has he looked? I know he doesn't have any points yet, but how has he looked like back in shape wise on the ice with the Griffins? Yeah,
he seems like a guy who, I mean, you can just, like I said, I was there on Saturday, just the eye test. The guy is clearly, talent level is above the AHL, but I think just kind of getting his legs under him still. I mean, it's been, over 2 months since his last game. So you kind of got to give him a little more than 3 games to kind of really start getting back to full speed. He was in the right position, I saw, pretty much on a consistent basis, but it was kind of getting the speed and transition. And then he had a couple times where he was fed some one-timers and just like completely whiffed on them. I had a chance to chat with him after the game, and you could see the frustration he had with himself, and just like he's a very competitive guy. No matter, even if he's playing down here at the AHL level, he wants to win games, and he emphasized, he's been there for 3 games and they've had 3 losses. So I don't think he's happy with his game, kind of where it's at right now. I think he needs a little time to get into it. And it's just a matter of getting back on that bike, and I think once he kind of gets up to rhythm, gets back, gets his legs back under him, gets up to speed, he'll be fine. It's just a matter, it's not just like pushing a button and you're back ready to play with the greatest hockey players in the world. It's going to take a little bit of time here for him.
Is the conditioning like the biggest thing you think at the moment? I mean, like you said, the talent level is that's, we all know that. Obviously, he's better than an AHL player, but like, is it really just the biggest thing? Just going to be the conditioning?
Yeah, I think it was definitely more noticeable the first 2 games, but a lot of our fans and followers said like, they didn't even really notice him. He didn't really get a lot of playing time in. It was more just kind of getting him on the ice and seeing how he was doing. And, instead of giving him like, okay, we're giving him like first line, minutes, 25 minutes tonight and get him going. Like it's kind of getting, again, back into that rhythm. So I do think it's more of a physical thing, just kind of, just getting back your body into that rhythm of getting up for practices and game days every single day. It's no joke being out for months. It's just like coming off an injury in a way. So There's a lot of positives to look forward to. He had one really good chance on a one-timer that I really wanted to see go in, but the goalie from Milwaukee kind of moved across laterally and made an unreal save on him. Their announcers called it their save of the year and everything. So I'm not just like trying to
saw that highlight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
crazy.
a really good play. So a couple things here and there, like he's getting there, but then I saw another one on the other end of the ice where he just had one just like looked like me trying to rip a one-timer in Fraser and just totally whiffed on it.
I've been there too.
Yeah,
There was one a couple weeks ago, in
there.
fact.
So whereas I just kind of laugh and shrug about it, obviously he was a little more frustrated in the post gamer.
Yeah.
But again, it's just a matter of we'll see where he's at the end of these 2 weeks. I think by that time he should be fine. I just think that maybe 3 games, the last 2 were back to back. It's tough to kind of get yourself in and ready. After a break like that, I don't blame the Wings for being like, okay, let's give him a little more time to simmer down there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously us as Red Wings fans were hoping that he could come back as soon as possible and just would miraculously be prepared to play NHL caliber games after not playing a game since October. But, Scotty and I talked about it, and that we knew that they hadn't ruled out sending him down to Grand Rapids because they said that that's still a possibility. And I think in the back of my head, I'm like, I knew that was probably the right choice to make just because, like you said, it's like coming off of an injury. And so in the 3 games, you said that there's been flashes and that it's just a matter of getting his legs under him by the end. And I'm asking your opinion more than like analysis on this part, but at the end of this 2-week stretch, and he's going to have, I don't know how many more games in that span, but he'll have several more games in that span. Where do you think that he should be? Do you think he should just be 100% back legs wise and be ready? Or do you think it's still going to be like, okay, even when he gets back called to the NHL, probably going to take a little bit longer to get those legs underneath him?
Yeah, I think probably by the end of this stint, you'll see him definitely making those plays more consistently. Some of them, hopefully, we'll find them in the back of the net and get the Griffins into the win column a bit here. But I wouldn't expect like his first game back in Detroit, he's just all of a sudden kind of lighting it up, because then it begins another adjustment period. And then you get, the speed down here in which the plays are made at the AHL is obviously way different. That's the whole point of the 2 different leagues and everything. So, so there's going to be, he's not going to be a guy. I mean, he might come in and just light it up immediately, but I would kind of like ease the expectations on him, be patient. We've seen what he can do before. We know what he's capable of. It's just a matter of having him, it's almost like he was in for those 2 games in October, then he was out. Now it's almost like you're putting him back through like a training camp scenario, preseason in Grand Rapids, and then you have him kind of getting gear as he's really getting into his game. Now you bring him up to Detroit and get him back into his old role, and it's going to take some time. Again, it's going to be all about patience. And the good thing about having some of these young kids up here like Berggren and Soderblom is that we're not rushing because we're starved for playmakers. We have some other guys who can fill the gap for the time being, and I think they've done an excellent job. And I would like to see some goals in Grand Rapids. They could use a couple of those goals, but it's, for me, I'm more trying to see, the light touch passes, the plays here and there, the ones that show me that, his mind's engaged and he's into the game and that he's up to speed with the timing of, the plays going through the neutral zone, more so than, he just hammers a shot and the goalie makes a great save on it. So there's nothing showing up on the scoreboard and like, oh, that'll come. I think kind of getting the, more of the intangibles in there kind of is the focus for the time being. And then once he's there, the goals will follow afterwards.
Absolutely. When we come back, we'll transition into talking about the Griffins as a whole, as they're not doing so hot so far this season. Last place in the division, and we'll talk about reasons why that could be. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for sports betting info, stats, and news and analysis. You get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and, hey, maybe some World Junior Hockey action. Quarterfinals going on as we speak. Team USA rolled over Team Germany. They've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Hi, Lacey. How are you? I trapped a cat in the room again by accident, and now she's...
You keep doing that, man.
She hides under the bed, so I don't know if she's in here. What's up? No, she's just stretching. If she comes over here, we'll have a cat cam, but that's all if she comes over here or not. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're joined by Andrew Rinaldi of Field Pass Hockey. He's a Griffins beat writer for them. Let's talk about the Griffins as a whole. Right now, they are currently last in the Central Division. They are 11-17 and 1 in 29 games played. What's going on with them, man? I mean, obviously, the fact that Soderblom didn't get sent down to the AHL to start the season, when you would probably think that's going to be a huge help. Berggren got called up. Veleno stayed with the team at the start of the season. That's got to be, huge blows to what could have been making this Griffins team a lot better. But besides that, like, what's going on in net? What's going on in the depth? Why is the team in last?
For sure. Those call-ups were definitely a huge bummer early on in this season. Berggren was up, maybe not even a month in, and I don't know about you guys. I don't expect to see him back down here in Grand Rapids anytime
Better not.
Yeah, neither do we.
Yeah. And then, when you had the injuries up in Detroit, you had Matt Luff get called up. Then he gets hurt, so he's out for a while. And they were expected to lean on him for a big veteran presence in that lineup. He's not there. Austin Czarnik just got back, and he's kind of taken over that that number one center role there in Grand Rapids. But they were missing him for a big chunk of the season. And another big injury that's really hit this team has been Cross Hannes. He was a big depth producer for them early on, scored some huge goals, especially in that Toronto series in November. And he's been out for the last couple of weeks now. It's getting injury information out of AHL teams is like pulling teeth. So I don't even try and ask those questions anymore. He's that's a big big hole to fill in your lineup. That a surprise for sure. A 20-year-old coming out and producing like he was, but when you lose that, now they've managed to kind of fill in the gaps a little bit. Danny O'Regan was acquired in that 3-way trade. They signed Alex Chason, which that was I haven't asked him quite about that meme of the 3 Red Wings laughing at him yet, but I'm working my way into that direction.
Love it.
So you lose a lot of depth scoring. They're still kind of trying to work their way into it, but I think a big issue with this team is just consistency. Just this past weekend, they start out the first game against Milwaukee, and it almost looked like they just were not interested in playing hockey whatsoever. The effort wasn't there, and it's one thing if the team's more talented than you, but if you don't outwork them, then it's, what are we even doing here at the end of the day? So then they turn around and show a better effort against Milwaukee, and, they just kind of fall short in essentially a 1-goal game. But there's so many roller coaster rides with this team, and they're up and then they're down, and then they're up and they're down and they're up, and it's like you look like they've kind of found it out, and then they lay a dud against a team like Hartford or something. So it's hard to gauge kind of what Griffins team you're going to get, because there are a lot of guys out here when their identity is is their compete level, really. And wherever, again, no matter what the talent they got, they're going to show up and they're going to work. But when you don't show up and you don't work, that's the whole identity of your team. Like, what's going on? What are you doing? So that's been another issue. And then the other big one, and that's kind of the elephant in the room, is that the goaltending has just not been there. And a lot of it is due to having a young defense in front of them. Emil Viro, Albert Johansson, Simon Edvinsson are all guys in their first year up here in North America. But You look at a guy like Donovan Sabrango, who's been down in Toledo to kind of develop his game there instead of what we expected to kind of have another big season here in Grand Rapids. And then the wheels just kind of fall off. You know, you lean on the vet guys like Steven Kampfer and Brian Lashoff, but they're they can only do so much. And really, I mean, just neither one of UC Okunora or Victor Bratstrom has really been able to kind of seize the starters crease. It's been kind of one or the other, and they'll follow up a great performance with a not so great performance. Again, that whole consistency issue. And, you know, the last time we saw Sebastian Kosa, he got lit up for 6 goals in a period, and it's like, oh, maybe he's not ready yet. So it's just a lot of questions and not a whole lot of answers being provided by this Griffins lineup right now.
Well, I think I wanted to ask about Kosa specifically. I know he's been in Toledo for a large majority of lately because of what you just mentioned. But obviously, at the very beginning of the season, it was kind of like, oh, like, where is he going to play? And he was like going down on off days and then like coming back up for game days. And it was like weird. And now, like I said, lately, obviously he's been in Toledo for a lot, but just talk about whether it's like the beginning of the season or like maybe if there's still like expectations in the room about like where, like when is he going to get some legitimate playing time? Is that still like looking pretty far away, I guess?
I think as long as Bratstrom and Okunura's goals against average kind of hover around 4, I believe the last time I was looking at him. No, Okunura's improved to a 3.75. So, okay, there's some improvement there. But as long as there's that, I think there's going to be like a opportunity for Kosa. But, I mean, when you see Seabass get lit up the way that he did against Chicago earlier in December, that was a tough one there. You know, he wasn't helped out quite a lot by the Griffins, but there was also, you know, some communication issues with the defenseman. He plays a puck and then turns around and it's in his net. And then there's some other ones where it just doesn't look like he's got his positioning down right. And then a lot of it's just, you know, the mentality of a young netminder kind of getting, you know, their team getting caved in, and it's, you know, it's tough to respond. So I think the best option for him is to remain in Toledo, where he can at least like have a somewhat competitive team. I know I'm kind of dragging on the Griffins here a little bit, but
when you're last in place, I think it's a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and so you can, and not only that, he's not battling with a couple other veterans for starts. He's the guy, and you feed him those starts, and he can work on those facets of his game without getting caved in for 6 goals in a period. So I think that's the better option for him. I don't think we're done seeing him in Grand Rapids this year. As long as you keep getting what you're getting out of the netminders, I think he's bound to just like, okay, let's give him a shot and see what we got here. Maybe, you know, he puts in a good body of work in Toledo, and then maybe end of February, we're like, hey, you know, we're kind of 15 points out of the playoff race here or whatever it is. You know, let's give him a shot. Why not? You know, it can't hurt us. So I wouldn't expect a whole big helping of Kosa, but you know, he might come in and later in the year and just give us a change of pace and see what we might have in store coming up maybe for next year.
Yeah, I want to ask you about Edvinsson, but I'll wait until we get to the segment 3, just because we're starting to get close. But before we get to segment 3, I do want to ask you a little bit more about Donovan Sabrango, because he was a guy who seemingly, not that he's taken a step back this year, but he took a step forward last year. I was really impressed with what he did in what last year was his first professional year. And now this year he got sent back down to the ECHL to, like you said, further develop his game. What do you think you've seen out of Donovan Sabrango that makes you think that, okay, maybe he needs a little bit more time at the ECHL level before he's ready to make that leap?
Yeah, I asked Coach Simon about Sabrango being assigned earlier in December, and I think the emphasis was more, you know, instead of having him as a third pairing defender on Grand Rapids, is that you send him to Toledo where he can be the number one defender in all situations, and kind of like what we're doing with Kosa instead, but with a defender, which it makes sense. And but it's still at the end of the day, you kind of feel at your core that like it feels like a demotion. Here's a guy who during the COVID season, because of juniors not playing, he's in Grand Rapids and actually kind of looks pretty good when he's there. And then last season, he's got his first full season, looks pretty good. So now so when you get demoted, now I guess you're thinking in your head, like, okay, like what is wrong? And it doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong. I do think that maybe they kind of expected a bit of a step forward, and maybe it wasn't as big of a step that they're seeing in his game. But you can kind of say that around the board for a lot of the guys here. So I'm not gonna just call out Donovan, because I mean he brings a lot to this team.
Well, that's exactly it. Because I remember, especially when World Juniors did end up happening, he made a couple big plays for Team Canada, and so I was actually really shocked, because I don't admittedly follow the Griffins as closely as I follow the Red Wings.
Mm-hmm.
So I was shocked when I saw they sent him down to the ECHL, because at last I had checked, he was really taking strides, at least that from what I had heard. So it was a bit, but it's not like you said, it's kind of the same thing when they send prospects or young guys from the NHL team down to the AHL. It's the same philosophy. It's like, what's better served is the minutes on the third pair versus the minutes on the top pair to slightly lower level. So yeah, I'm not too worried. I'm not worried about his development. I was just curious to see if maybe what was the reason Coach Simon said, and you kind of just laid it out there.
Yeah, I think it has more to do with a guy like Albert Johansson coming over and seamlessly being so strong in his game, especially the transition from Europe to North America, that he could be one of I would say one of the earlier call-ups. Maybe I think it probably would have Jared McIsaac at the top of that list, but Albert Johansson's not far behind. And so when Johansson wasn't here last year, not to push Sabrango, and he is here this year. Emil Viro is another guy who I thought looked really good on Saturday. And, just again, first season in North America, but he's learning with each and every game. And so, I mean, it's good to have those, a bit of those log jams sometimes. It's like, who do we want up here? Who do we want down there? And Sabrango, I guess, was just kind of the odd man out in that situation.
Awesome. All right. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll ask you about Simon Edvinsson, because I'm sure that's really one of the guys that our listeners want to hear about. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings, Tuesday edition. We are joined by Andrew Rinaldi, beat writer for Field Pass Hockey, Grand Rapids Griffins beat writer. Should probably add that in there, if people haven't garnered that already, at least. And Andrew, Simon Edvinsson, keep it nice and simple. What have you seen?
Yeah, just steady progress, I can say, from day one. His offensive numbers might not jump out and wow you, but he's also not really being asked to perform that role in Grand Rapids right now. Just for example, on the power play, they're looking more to guys like Steven Kampfer or Jared McIsaac. And then, you give Simon Edvinsson some power play time there. But, at the moment, the biggest thing I've noticed in his game developing is he's kind of getting a bit of a mean streak in there, and he's really starting to fill out in that 6'6" frame and knowing how to use it to clear out defenders or to clear out forwards in front of the net. And sometimes when guys try and get a little nasty with him, or they'll kind of throw some shots, he really got into the heads of the Iowa Wild the last time they played him. And you love seeing him throw his weight around. You love seeing him just get a little mean and nasty in front of the net, and for a 19-year-old kid who's bigger than everyone on the ice, and kind of recognize that. And he doesn't back down. I think that's kind of been one of the bigger aspects of his game to evolve over the last couple of months that, we've started to see him at the beginning of the season. His, Coach Simon's really emphasized his compete level and how he's really grown in that regard as well. And as he's 19 years old, again, I know he was drafted real high, but he's not going to have these big glowing offensive numbers. So anyone who's saying he's only got one goal, don't freak out and hit the panic button and start calling this kid a bust, because Mo Sider didn't have the greatest offensive production at the beginning in Grand Rapids either, and I think he turned out okay.
Well, and also I like to add this in: it's okay to let your defensemen be defensemen.
Yeah,
You don't need your defenseman. Every defenseman doesn't need to be Cale Makar and score 100 points in a season. It's all right for them to stay at home. Like, what did Nick Lidstrom make a living doing? Staying at home. So it's all right to let them play defense. That's the philosophy I live by. Red Wings got enough off. You got Hronik, you got Jake Wallman, Sider's got offensive upside. I'm okay with Simon Edvinsson being a defensive guru. That's okay.
Yeah. And in that regard, I think he's, as a 19-year-old is going to adjust and make his mistakes, but I think he also learns from them. I think he's growing. He's doing very well, especially at just exiting the zone, getting the puck out without having, four checkers draped all over him and getting big costly turnovers. And ultimately that's kind of like you said, what you want out of your defenseman. That's the first word in defenseman is defense. So I think he's doing himself. He's rounding into his game, looking like a real solid player. I love watching him just skate. He's a really smooth skater, especially for his size. I mean, it's almost unnatural how smooth you can flow when you got that kind of big frame on you. So
remember his breakaway goal during World Juniors, the canceled one?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So we haven't seen anything like that yet here in Grand Rapids, but I think it's kind of just a matter of time for him to kind of, build his confidence both with and without the puck. And I mean, we're only just a handful over 20 games into the season here for him. So just the sky's the limit on this young kid. And, it's a tough situation also when you're in a last place team, and you see some of the lineups shaking up and it's like, okay, this isn't working. Why don't we try this and seeing him a bit more? But I do think that kind of insulating him is best for his development, because ultimately you throw out a 19-year-old on a team that's not really playing the best hockey and it could destroy his confidence more than anything. So I think that they're on the right track, and anyone who thinks otherwise should take a look at Mo Sider's game film, because two different players obviously, but ones that we hope end up in the same trajectory.
For sure. I don't have any more individual. I was kind of going to ask a general question, Brian, unless you have any more individual players you want to.
No, go for it.
I think we've been talking about like pros and cons of so many players, and it's a last place team and a lot of negatives. Just rattle off a few names of like who's just impressed you the most this year. Like that's like just some positivity at the end here. We'll sprinkle that in at the end.
For sure. I've already talked about Albert Johansson and just how much he surprised me coming in, but I can't stress that enough about how poised he looks in his own zone. He came up with a couple of huge shot blocks over on Saturday night, and kind of, same thing, when it's defense first, and he really exemplifies that. And he's looked great in his own zone. And as a young player, he's going to continue to learn. He's going to continue to make mistakes, but he's going to learn from those, and he's going to end up being a better player as a result. I really liked what I've seen from him. And the other one's been Pontus Andreasen. He's got some smooth mitts. I don't want to say he's Datsukian, because there's a bit of a reputation behind that. But there's some plays that he makes sometimes where he's got a bit of that trickiness. He makes a little head fake and bounces the puck off the boards, and then he's got it again over on the other side. And it's like that was nice. He's moved into a great position, been developing some chemistry with Joel L'Esperance there, and they've both been kind of putting up a solid amount of points for a team that's dead last in goals in the division. And I think after he kind of got through his adjustment period coming over here from Sweden, that he's starting to settle in. Had another big goal on Saturday night, and he's going to be a guy that they're gonna lean on for offense. He's in a perfect world, we'd see him playing with Cross Hannes over on the other wing, and those two it was just instant chemistry. But he's kind of had to move around the lineup. Everyone's been moving around the lineup here with injuries and call-ups and everything. But he's a guy who's I think he's, as far as consistency, has definitely been one of the most consistent forwards for the Griffins, which is saying a lot because there hasn't been a lot of that this year.
So I have one more question for you, and it actually has to do with the Red Wings, but it could impact the Griffins. So 3 players all practiced for the Detroit Red Wings on Monday. Robbie Fabbri, Philip Zadina, and Tyler Bertuzzi, all in non-contact jerseys, all playing on their own line. But Robbie Fabbri is listed as day-to-day. Now, Derek Lalonde has said, and this part's kind of just news or notes to the listeners. We haven't said this part. But Derek Lalonde has said that it would be tough to see taking out any of Soderblom, Veleno, or Berggren because of the fact they've been playing so well. But when these 3 players plus Vrana come back, so 4 total, aren't healthy, some roster decisions are going to have to be made. Now, barring a trade, assuming a trade doesn't happen, what players do you expect to see in Grand Rapids, assuming that they make it past waivers if they're not already waiver exempt?
Mm-hmm. See, that's just it. It's all about the philosophy of, do you want to risk throwing that guy on waivers, or do you want to send down the kid who's been playing really well and probably doesn't deserve it, but there's just no room, and we'll see. So, from the popular threads that I've been reading, the popular suspects are the Adam Ernies or the Pew Suitors of the world and everything. Apparently everyone just wants to see all of our penalty killers put on waivers, and then I don't know who's going to kill penalties once that's all said and done. So
it's all about points. Don't you know that, Andrew?
Right. Well, the Griffins did have a 8-7 comeback win over Chicago. So yeah, maybe we just score 8 goals and everyone is happy. It's worked out so well for them so far. So, I mean, I think you're going to have to maybe, as I know everyone's going to kick my teeth in for this, but I do think that maybe Soderblom's going to have to end up being the guy coming down. Or are you going to send down Berggren? Because I think that second power play line has never looked better than when he's been on there. And
I agree with you on. I think
so tough to justify.
You literally can't.
That's like such a difficult argument to make at this point.
I just want Berggren sent down because I'm going this weekend and it's Jonathan Berggren bobblehead night, and I want to interview him with the bobblehead. And is it that much to ask?
Nice. It's such a tough situation. I think Soderblom, out of the guys that are waiver exempt, I think Soderblom is the only one that you really can justify sending down, because I think there are facets of his game that could still be worked on. But he hasn't necessarily looked out of place at the NHL level. He seems to have finding his groove as every game goes on. But Berggren looks 100% NHL ready. I haven't seen a flaw in his game bad enough that I'd be like, yeah, he needs more time. He doesn't need more time. And we were saying at the end of last season, Scotty and I were saying at the end of last season, he really doesn't need more time. But last year was such a bust already. They were like, well, let's just have him finish out the year. Veleno is really taking a step forward this year, I think. So it's like, I think Soderblom could. And then you have you're handing 3 goalies. You're juggling 3 of them. You might end. Do you risk, obviously Hallberg's on a 1-year deal, but he's been the guy you've been going to as your backup lately. Nedeljkovic's deal is expiring. Do you just risk losing a goalie on waivers?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the one making these decisions.
Yeah.
I can say that much.
It's tough, man.
Yeah, the net situation is, Hallberg looked really good down here with the Griffins, and I was hoping they would have, maybe extended his conditioning stint a little longer, but
he looked too good.
He only needed that 1 week. Yeah, he was perfectly fine. So, I don't know if it comes down to a point where it's like, well, maybe let's give Ned one of those conditioning stints. I don't know how long he's got to be out in order for them to be available for that.
The problem, though, is he's still on the NHL roster on conditioning stints. So even if they gave him a conditioning stint, that doesn't free up a roster spot.
Right. So you might just have to.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, you need to make a roster space. Most teams don't carry 3 goalies, right? Like, it's got to be either Hellberg or Net.
It's the easiest place to point to off rip, man. Or like if you want to get super crazy, then you start having like the Suter and Ernie conversation. Like if none of the rest is justifiable to you, and you really are adamant on keeping 3 goalies for some reason, but like even that, you're just really you're just delaying the inevitable anyway, because then Bert's going to come back right after Fabbri comes back, and then like you're going to be in the same position. So like
you got to free up 4 roster spots
now.
Yeah, sooner or later the goalie situation is going to be it has to be answered. Yeah. It's you can kick the can down the road only for so long, but then at some point it's going to come up and rear its ugly head. So I don't know who you make a decision on, whether it's Hellberg, whether it's Ned. I mean, right? Either one is only here. Their contract ends at the end of the season, so you're not married to either one, I guess. But you also don't want to burn Billy Husso out, because every time you throw out one of your backups, they're just getting lit up there. So. Again, I'm glad I'm not making these decisions. Right. I could give like a, what I would do, but I'm not Steve. I don't try and pretend to be Steve. I would, yeah. Soderblom, I think he's got, just unreal potential. He's been playing great. Maybe a little bit more seasoning wouldn't hurt him. I don't think it would hurt us either. And then, but until we get this situated, that might be the best move. And then someone might be hitting the waiver wire. I don't know who. I'm not going to try and
let's get crazy. Let's get crazy with it. Let's see here. Who would be absolutely nutty to put on the waiver wire? You know what? Have Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider played enough games yet to be on the waiver wire? Are they still waiver exempt? Are they options?
Right call. Not clickbait. Armor Insider.
Aren't they waiver exempt still technically?
Technically, I think they might actually still be waiver exempt.
I'm checking this right now.
Not clickbait. This is the title of today's show.
You know what? Moritz Seider has had a rough season, guys. I think he might need to get sent down. My God, people would stop listening to us so fast if we were serious about that. He is waivers exempt. Seider's waivers. There we go. We got our answer. We'll send Vallejo, Berggren, Soderblom, Seider, and Raymond down, and then we don't have to lose anybody. We just lose 2 of our top players.
Then we have
it's all about flexibility.
Yeah, right. I mean, with all of that, we'd have enough room to bring in Brian Fisher of Elite Prospects. So.
There we go. Problem solved. I actually did have a dream last night that I played for the Red Wings, and real talk in the dream, Scotty. I was like, why am I on the team? I suck at hockey. That was part of the dream. Even in my own dream, I'm not good at hockey.
Dude can't even dream big.
Right?
Even in his dream, he's like, this is not right. This is something
and like in the dream, they're giving me ice time. I'm like, why are they putting me out there? Like, are they trying to lose?
I don't belong here.
Felt so out of place.
Consciously being aware in your own dreams is just
right. The second he gets on the ice and checks in, he's like, this is a dream. There's no
right. Can't believe this.
Oh man. All right. We're way over time already. Andrew, as always, it was a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Want to plug your socials, plug anything you're working on?
Yeah, for sure. Anyone on Twitter can follow me at FPH Griffins. I'm always live tweeting the Griffins games. I'll be there at Van Andel Arena this weekend. I got a big article in the works for this Saturday's game where the Griffins are partnering up with the I Understand organization to kind of raise mental health awareness. And I that's an issue that's very near and dear to my heart as always. So anytime I can promote it, I always do. So I appreciate you guys having me on and giving me a chance to talk about it.
Oh, of course, man. Very cool. You're the lone source for Griffins news and Locked On Red Wings. You got it locked down.
Locked on.
was going to say, you could say you got
Dang
a
right.
locked on. We'll be back tomorrow, guys, with a game preview of the Wings' first game in like 4 days. So stay tuned for that. Again, Andrew, thank you so much. Scott, any final thoughts? I got to ask.
We will.
We will. Be back tomorrow, same time, same place. See your team every day.
Every day.